Greetings. I'm not a public speaker, and I hope you'll bear with me. I know a few things, and I hope that you enjoy in the future learning with me, and can become a part of the overall process of a journey toward virtue, and which is a journey toward love. And I'll have more comments about that at the end of this presentation, and when I'm looking at the overview. This session, I'll call it Bodily Awareness and Connection. I'm looking at notes because I'm not a professional speaker. I'm not reading off the palm of my hand. Get that joke already down. Anyway, okay, it's part of a process, first point. And the process itself should not be your life, but just a part of it. And so it has to be in a part of a process so that you don't tend to overdo it. You know, and so that it's in its proper context within the process itself, which involves both verbal and nonverbal approaches. The bodily awareness is nonverbal. In other words, well, non-language. I shouldn't say verbal. I assume when people say verbal, they're talking about words and language, but some may not see it that way. So let's just say it's a pre-language kind of perception. And where does that come from? Well, that's how we started off in life, and more on that later. Okay. So I've covered keeping it in context. The third point I'd like to make is that why keeping it in context. I'll go into more depth there. It's part of a process. It's not the entire process. Any part of the process on its own can be a distraction and lead to delusions. And also, this is a very powerful level, and it has to be blended in. It's like a seasoning to things. Look at it more like that. It's not something that you want to focus entirely on. And I've seen a lot of processes where they do that, and there's claims made, but there are problems with that. And let's see. The problems with that are that if you overdo it, there are side effects. There are side effects to anything, even drinking water. You have too much water. But you can have too little. Okay, the fourth point. It is helpful in unlearning helplessness. It's the whole point is to get in touch with things you were helpless to get in touch with before. And that's not to say it's all negative either. Both negative and positive things in your life that you have helplessness around. And the negative part is basically helplessness around the positive things, or the expression of the negative things, which is in a sense a crying out for the positive. So that's point number 4. As a part of the, and it is a part again, it does that better when you include all of the areas in which you may have become, helpless to some degree. Point number 5, let's see. Keep educated and follow your doctor's advice. I'm not the kind of guru that tells you magic is possible. You don't have to believe in anything magical to have this work, and you need to consider it and any practice within the bounds of what your doctor, your professionals in the medical field have to say, especially uniquely for you, which is why I'm so very much for healthcare for everyone, because everyone should have that. It makes a better society, not just a better person. And one day I'll go into that more. Number 6, ego transcendence. Well, first of all, ego transcendence is not enlightenment. Okay, you hear a lot of that. People spacing out. I'm one with the universe. I have no unchanging ego or self. I could be almost anything, any person in a way. And so I have no self. I'm all selves. Or I could potentially be any self. Those 3 ego transcendent views are important, but they're not enlightenment. Enlightenment is what makes your life better for you and others around you. Plain and simple. Some of your greatest gurus are psychologists. Surprised? Absolutely, that's a fact. And your medical practitioners and psychiatrists. And they have some evidence to back them up. So consider all this an augmentation, and part of a lifestyle that you may choose. But remember what the Buddha said. A person can say, I have a way. They can't say, I have a way. I have the only way. And what's presented to you may not be your way. But I think that maybe some modification of it could be your way. And for most of you, I think it could be. That's how you're born. And if that were sufficient, that's how you saw things when you were pre-language, pre-social to a certain degree, and and more, just instinctive. That's not enlightenment. And let's see. Okay. It also, by the way, can have side effects. People that meditate too much, which is a part of the process I talk about. That can have side effects. It's a virtual sensory deprivation. So it's no miracle that people who pray too much or meditate too much see things and hear things that aren't there sometimes. Yeah, maybe that's comforting for them. Maybe that's something that makes them feel better. Well, okay. But don't draw objective truth from that. Leave that open. Yeah. It's called Makyo. I believe that was a Japanese term for it. Where they would have bad experiences from meditating. You didn't know that was possible, did you? Well, when you focus too much on the pre-language experience in your life, you also make connection to those times of helplessness that were most impacting to you or on you. And instead of just an anxiety, it's very strong. Where there's damage, not everyone's damaged there that significantly, but if you connect to that, you've got to be aware that that's a possibility. It's remote, especially if you're doing it in a full context like I'm talking about. But it is there. So I don't want to freak people out, but you could be tapping into wordless terror. And then your mind goes really crazy. A lot of what the mind does is like it did in the beginning. You deal with such anxieties with a generalization of the needs in the situation and symbolic expressions appropriate to that. That can be part of mental illness and criminality and a lot of other things. So, okay, I'm just saying, when you're looking for a spiritual teacher, that spiritual teacher shouldn't be telling you this is what you do instead of health care, instead of what the doctor recommends. These are frauds. Your modern yogis are in the health field, and in other ways, even people like Neil deGrasse Tyson are yogis. They see such an in-depth, big picture of things, which does border on a kind of intellectual enlightenment. And again, not everybody has the same wherewithal. So remember, you're the hero in the movie, the book of your life. And this overall process is to appreciate that and to love yourself and others. Now, number 7, let's view this within the overall practice. And to do that, we have to talk about what is this pre-language kind of practice. Well, mythology has value, okay? Those of you who are, fond of the great late Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, understand that mythology has its place, and it is valuable. It can be quite powerful. So, with that in mind, let me first begin by saying that these three approaches come from the yogic mythologies, the three Vedic yogas, which essentially are approaches to this three-language awareness using breath, concentration, and sound. So, the three approaches. Now, let me define what real yoga is. Real yoga puts you in touch with your feelings, all of them, from many perspectives. And that's the path toward greater enlightenment and higher levels of virtue and emotional intelligence, and perhaps intellectual skill and so on as well. This approach and this approach is is a feeling approach. Let me put it that way. Yes, I use sound, which is called mantra yoga, but it's not ritualized and symbolized, like magical kinds of mantras. There are none. Some sounds make you feel good, some sounds don't. The overall approach that I use is to, with each individual practice, is to search for a comfort. When you put them all together, that's what shakes up that comfort and leads to greater enlightenment, since you don't want to overstress yourself. So everything is balanced out when you put them all together. But in the use of sound, well, just make up any sound you want. Try to sing, do whatever, as long as it isn't language, and add some feeling to it. Boom. That's the kind of mantra yoga that I teach. And in music, you might hear it, like that. Whatever helps you feel better. Now, when it comes to the breath approach, which in the yogic myth is called prana yoga. Again, it's not a ritualized thing. In some cases, they use it, blending it into medicine. So there are some values there, and I'm not going to put those down. But the approach in this area, this process that I'm talking about, again, is a feeling approach. So without some degree of sound, there's no expression, but you want to emphasize the breath. So it's how you breathe in and how you breathe out. A deeper breathing opens up more feeling. Okay, but you don't want to get dizzy. Hyperventilation is not good for the brain. But it's less playful with the sounds than the mantra approach I use. It's more, well, a little less. It's just using the breath as a more major focus. And in order to do that, I like 3 sounds. And you may think of others, but when you breathe out, breathe in deep from the diaphragm, and then breathe out, but make sound. Ah, ooh, Now that can be a positive kind of sound like that, you're enjoying something. That's fine. Or you might feel like you need to express something that's more negative, which is also a pathway to love, because it expresses your need. Kind of puts you in touch with those feelings that you have. There is no positive and negative there, in terms of one's better than the other. That's what helps you feel better, what comforts you. So you can go either way. That's the simple practice that I use. You can do it on the in-breath, it's more powerful. If you breathe out, maybe that sound changes to a howl or some other appropriate expression. But it's can be more powerful if you're doing it more quickly sometimes. So the speed and how you draw it out is important. So drawing it out has its benefits. Doing it quickly, like again, no hyperventilation. That can sometimes be helpful. But again, it's up to you. Watch, because that you will quickly turn into hyperventilation, so be careful of that. You feel lightheaded, stop immediately. All right, do something else. All right. So that's important. Well, what's the third thing? Well, concentration, which has been called meditation. It's even been called the inner yoga, which I think is not correct. The true inner yoga is all of these things put together, because you're talking about in your mind, in your brain, those relationships within yourself, be they social or otherwise, but connections within you. And meditation's only a part of that. But it's been called that. It's been misnomered as that. It's not everything that you should do in life, and definitely not. But when you're meditating, try to be aware of the sensations and the emotions and feelings that you have. Just concentrate on those. Sometimes concentrating on the negative can be helpful. Just to watch, in a sense, the pain creates a distance between you and the pain. It's there, but it isn't upsetting you so much. You disconnect the fear from it. It's not so intense. Or, you concentrate on pleasant sensations that you may be having. All in an attempt to feel better. To comfort yourself. So, we call all of this the comfort cure. How does this fit in? Well, the other processes are verbal, and they are part of the process in which this fits. One is between yourself and your more objective self, your part of you that's the dramatic self that is experiencing your life more directly and more emotionally impacted, in a more emotionally impacted way. So I call that the kid. And so that's counseling, as you're being your own counselor. Can this be augmented by someone who is counseling you? Yes, of course it can. It can enhance it. You're out, if any counseling on the outside could be an enhancement of the counseling you do for yourself. So, what you practice within you has connections to what happens in your daily life. So, don't forget to live your daily life and only make this a part of it. That's one of the easiest practices in the verbal realm. Again, try to help yourself be less anxious and understand what's happening to you in a way that helps you. Then there's a communication with, and that helps more from the present, looking into the future. If you talk about if you mention the past or something in the past, you're talking about it. You're not reliving it. You're not experiencing it. That's the tendency here. It may occur, but it's not the point. The point is to be objective and to use that to help you and understand, which helps you to comfort yourself. That's the basis of truth. And the truth, will set you free. And too many other things also set you free. But that's important. Now, the communication between yourself and empathy is important. That means, how do you practice that? Well, you talk to people you care about, or who care about you, or who should care about you, or who you should care about. And you do it to find some comfort. And yes, that includes talking to people who are with you now and who are not. People who are alive and people who are not. People real. And people who in some ways are fictional. Doesn't matter. Help if you knew they were fictional. But that's okay. You have that communication. So you visualize and you communicate, and that connects you. Empathy connects you to the virtue of goodness. So that's how that's practiced. And the other practice, of course, the inner counseling. You're having a sense of separation between your emotions and your thinking. So that's a different kind of comfort. And it's more about the future, present looking into the future, whereas empathy is more about the present, looking into the past. And part of that is beautiful things that happened to you that you missed because you were wrapped up in some other kind of helplessness. You just didn't notice people reaching out to you and trying to love you at that time. So it can be a very positive experience in many ways, not just learning to express your needs and what they once were, but unlearning the helplessness surrounding them, so that you're not controlled by symbolic struggles for symbolic needs, which are safely removed from the earlier anxiety. So feeling things in their original helplessness is accomplished by all of these things working together, but more apt to occur in this kind of dialogue, perhaps, on the language level of your development. Now, communicating with that creative part of yourself, from which we get the virtue of art, the ability to appreciate life, negative or positive, and the good in ourselves and the beautiful in ourselves and others. This is a great dialogue. It's verbal. It's also a lot visual. The creative part of you, which I call the artist, can create experiences for you. Can go into your negative experiences and help you feel more comforted in them. You relive the experience with a positive, helpful hand holding yours. Yeah. Taking a path, which may represent a period of time. Someone caring is with you. And so, yeah. So you're creating experiences there, and you're experiencing them on the dramatic side. And from that perspective of the artist, that's where you come to know yourself as the hero. In the book, the movie of your life, and from that perspective, you're in heaven. Time is kind of, it stands still. You're having fun, time flies. Kids are out playing, you have to call them in for dinner because they have no sense of time. Timelessness, eternity. This is a moment in heaven, whenever those anxieties drop. And the mythology that I use here is that the artist reaches into your future as your counselor, your director, and into your past as empathy. And as that artist